Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we aren't just looking at the history of Venice. We're actually learning how to actively read the architecture of the city. Venice is literally packed with buildings that look absolutely breathtaking, even if you know zero about them. But once you understand what they were actually built for, the entire city just transforms right before your eyes. It's like unlocking a secret code.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to frame our whole explainer today around this one central mystery. What did the Republic of Venice want you to believe versus what was actually hiding behind the curtain? Because every single beautiful bridge, palace, and church was designed to make you believe something very specific, completely masking a fascinating, highly engineered reality just beneath the surface.
So here's our roadmap to strip away that illusion. First up, the engine of trade. Second, the stage of power. Third, velvet gloves, iron fists. Fourth, the gears of empire. And finally, reading the true Venice.
All right, Part 1, the engine of trade, focusing on the Grand Canal and Rialto.
Now, when you picture the Grand Canal today, it seems like this peaceful, incredibly romantic avenue, right? But historically, I want you to imagine it around the year 1500. There are no motor engines, obviously. Instead, picture just an absolute sensory overload. You've got wooden hulls aggressively knocking against mooring posts, oars splashing, sailors constantly shouting, and ropes creaking in the wind. And the air? It's thick with these intense smells of salt water, wet timber, exotic spices, and, well, let's be totally honest here, raw animal and human waste. It was chaotic, it was loud, and it was 100% driven by ruthless commerce.
When you look at these magnificent palaces lining the canal, you really have to remember that architecture is information. These aristocrats used their stunning Byzantine or Gothic facades as basically massive billboards of their wealth and power. That's the surface level, the beautiful family rooms and those grand reception halls up above. But look down at the water level, the reality of the situation. Those lowest floors were strictly business. We're talking deep storage rooms and loading docks, built out of tough Istrian limestone just to resist the constant creeping moisture of the tides. The canal wasn't their picturesque backyard, it was literally their storefront.
Now, what's really fascinating is how the business district at the Rialto Bridge calculated the world. They were masters at turning pure uncertainty into a hard price. Just think about the specific questions a banker would drill a young merchant with. Who is your father? Which exact ship is carrying the goods? This wasn't about a gut feeling. Trust was a strict, highly measurable network of family reputation, intense risk assessment, and commercial track records. Any piece of political or social information instantly became a massive economic advantage. Moving on to Part 2, the stage of power. Piazza San Marco and the Basilica. So, leaving those dense, cramped commercial canals, you step into this sudden, massive, wide-open space. And the surprise reveal? Completely deliberate. You see, behind closed doors, Venetian politics were full of bitter rivalries, fierce commercial competition, and just deep paranoia about conspiracies. But the architecture of the square was meticulously designed to project an image of absolute, perfect harmony. The Basilica anchored their sacred authority. The Doge's palace put government and justice on full display. And that towering campanile? It wasn't just a pretty bell tower, it was a critical tool for visibility, communication, and lagoon surveillance. The whole thing worked flawlessly together to broadcast one message: our rulers agree, and St. Mark protects us.
Step inside the Basilica and bam, your eyes are immediately hit with these shimmering gold mosaics and the legendary Palo d'Oro right behind the altar. But get this immense wealth wasn't just about pure religious devotion. As this famous quote perfectly captures, the underlying message was really, God is glorious, but Venice can obtain what others cannot. This entire building is essentially a political document built in gold and stone. It's showing unquestionable possession and divine approval of the state.
And honestly, nothing proves that possession quite like St. Mark's horses standing proudly above the entrance. These beautiful objects have a pretty dark reality attached to them. They were brutally looted from Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade. Just imagine these Venetian ships returning from sacking a Christian capital, loaded with these massive trophies. The Basilica is, at its core, a museum of connection and conquest. It proudly displayed the stolen prestige of the old imperial capital to literally every single visitor who walked by.
Which brings us to Part 3, velvet gloves, iron fists, the Doge's palace and prisons.
Now, from the outside, the Doge's palace looks incredibly delicate, almost like it's floating on air. But once you step inside the Great Council Hall, you find this heavy, deeply intimidating engine of government and psychological pressure. And this brilliantly illustrates how that psychological pressure worked. Check out how the state manipulated memory. For generations, they painted this unbroken line of honorable doges all around the room. But in 1355, Doge Marino Falier was executed for conspiring against the regime. So instead of a normal portrait, the state just painted over his face. They turned his absence into a permanent, chilling warning. It basically told every young patrician standing in that room, serve the Republic, sure, but never ever imagine you were above it.
From those magnificent, beautifully painted halls of public justice, you make this incredibly stark physical transition across the Bridge of Sighs. Now, tourists today flock to it. It's this elegant, totally romantic white bridge. But that's just the surface. The reality for the condemned was terrifying. Inside, it's this enclosed, claustrophobic, heavy stone corridor with severely restricted views of the outside world. This bridge perfectly reveals exactly how closely staggering beauty and brutal coercion were joined in the Venetian system.
Once you were inside those cells, the true reality of Venetian justice became crystal clear. While the state above ground was this highly organized, beautifully documented machine, justice down below was completely unequal. Your status and your family name absolutely dictated your fate. Money heavily influenced your treatment. Torture was an active, regular tool. And prison itself was very often just a grim holding area for something far worse. It was a very harsh reminder of who the state actually existed to protect.
All right, part 4, the gears of empire, the Museo Correre and the Arsenal. Moving into the quiet, pristine administrative world of museums like the Correre, history often chooses to remember the elegant doges, the grand maps, and the noble naval victories. But in doing so, it actively erases the working class, the sailors, and the thousands of laborers who actually built and maintained the empire. And absence is also historical evidence. To find the real labor, we have to look at the arsenal. If you strip away all the romantic myths, what you find is an enormous, heavily fortified state production zone. It was a sensory explosion of deafening hammering and sawing. The work was physically brutal and incredibly dangerous. Think boiling pitch, swinging heavy timber, and crushing machinery. But make no mistake, this highly disciplined, gritty labor force was the true machinery fueling Venice's naval glory. I absolutely love this quote because it hits the nail on the head regarding their entire global strategy. A treaty backed by no force is a request. A treaty backed by a fleet is policy. It's that simple. Venice's diplomatic credibility relied 100% on the sheer intimidating industrial scale of the arsenal. They had this ability to coordinate raw material, mass labor, and military planning at a level that was practically unmatched in pre-modern Europe.
So, the crucial point we keep coming back to is that even the most iconic, beautiful Venetian symbols were built for raw, practical power and function, not just aesthetics. Take the gondola. Today, obviously we see it as this romantic bucket list ride. But back in the day, it was essentially a 17th century private carriage, a mobile office, and a very strict status symbol. It was ingeniously built asymmetrically so that just one single gondolier could expertly navigate those incredibly dense, narrow, and busy commercial canals. Honestly, think of it less like a romantic boat ride and more like a highly practical VIP corporate Uber for the 1600s.
And finally, part 5, reading the true Venice, the machinery behind the beauty.
Venice is an absolute masterclass in taking a highly calculated, deeply commercial, and sometimes downright ruthless system and engineering it to look completely serene and effortless to the outside world. So how do you read this city, or really any historical city you might visit in the future? First, you've got to look past the beautiful marble facades to see the commercial function underneath. Second, spot the warehouses hiding in plain sight. Third, recognize the deliberate staging of power in those grand public squares. And fourth, always remember the excluded labor that built the monuments but didn't get their portraits painted. Having this framework completely changes how you experience history.
As we wrap up, I think this beautifully summarizes our explainer today. Venice's greatest achievement wasn't just becoming rich. Lots of places got rich. It was creating this flawless master system where the environment, trade, law, information, art, ceremony, and military force perfectly and seamlessly supported one another. Architecture truly is information, and Venice was the ultimate, flawlessly engineered machine. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Tomorrow, the city will show you beauty, but what machinery will you notice humming right behind it? The next time you look at a breathtaking piece of history, wherever you are, remember to ask yourself, what did they want me to believe and what reality is hiding just beneath the surface?
Thanks for joining me on this explainer, guys, and keep exploring.